Right. Let's get started, shall we? All right, so today, big off discussion is going to be what happened in Canberra on the 29th of November of this year. The issue of the genocide in our community is a pretty big one. And if you're watching this video, you already know that. One of the biggest issues we've had is convincing government reps, whether be they politicians, be they government bureaucrats, to recognize the genocide. And you might say, well, why is that important? Anything that's deemed to be controversial, government ministers tend to run very fast away from. And to consider the issue of genocide, which is a fact and actually has happened, as controversial, is downright insulting. Also significant about what happened a couple of weeks ago. Why are we making a big deal about this as opposed to many of the other recognitions or many of the other achievements we made in the past? 6 parliamentarians in federal parliament put forward a motion for the recognition of genocide. This is big. Usually we've had statements from certain politicians. I'll get through some of the history shortly. We've had a number of statements. Statements are fine. They're great. In fact, they're all considered to be small stepping stones to actually getting our message through to a wider audience, especially if they gain traction, especially if they're always in the parliaments here. Let's start off with the 6 representatives. We had Trent Zimmerman, and he's a member for North Sydney, I believe. Joel Fitzgibbon, and he was a former Defence Minister of Australia and member for Hunter. John Alexander, now he's the member for Bennelong. Josh Burns, a member for Macnamara. We also got Julian Lesser, he's a member for Berrowa. And finally, Steve Georgianis, who's the member for Adelaide. So these 6 lower house reps got up and supported a motion for recognition of the Armenian, Assyrian and Greek genocide. That's never happened before, not in federal parliament. Now, there was a time in our community that the thought of this ever happening was a pipe dream. And I must ask people not to get what happened confused with actual genocide recognition. That hasn't happened yet. But what we witnessed on Monday, 2 weeks ago, was a huge step forward in that direction. And now it's a great opportunity to talk a little bit about how we got here. And it's important to understand that. And there is no doubt that there are going to be names and events that I probably missed or glossed over. And if that's the case, I sincerely apologize. But I really do want to paint a very clear picture of where we were at and how we got to this particular point. Now, believe me, it was not easy. As a community, we Greeks had to change our approach and strategy more than once. Being humble and nimble enough to pivot from old held beliefs, old ways of doing things, that was what was paramount. People get so used to doing something a certain way that to change it puts a lot of risk of failure, and it's also uncomfortable. However, if we hadn't, there is absolutely no way that what we had achieved thus far would have been achieved. So the very first thing is we had to think outside the square. We've all heard that saying a million times, but it is very apt for our situation. Let's start from the first time Australia ever recognised any of the genocides, and that was back in 1997, and that was in New South Wales Parliament, and they recognised the Armenian genocide. It is no secret that when it comes to this particular issue, the Armenian community is at the forefront of it. They've developed a whole strategy behind it, and their ability to be able to engage at different levels of government is a sight to behold. The Greek genocide, and more at the time, that was more commonly known as the Pontian genocide, because it was the Pontian community that was really pushing the issue. Outside of the Pontian community, there was very little interest in the issue. And that, of course, changed on the 25th of May 2005, when a newly elected federal parliamentarian from South Australia by the name of Stephen Georgianis, in a statement to Parliament, commemorated the Pontian genocide. And for us, This marked the first time the issue of genocide was mentioned in any parliament in Australia. Less than a year later, on the 4th of May of 2006, Jenny McCarcos did the same in the state of Victoria. So she was a state parliamentarian and she did the same here. And she did so while being derided by many of her own colleagues from her own party in the Victorian Parliament. Suffice it to say, these moments marked a major shift in the political landscape regarding the issue. The issue was now being discussed. On the 20th of December 2008, the then Attorney General of South Australia, Michael Atkinson, unveils a plaque at the South Australian Immigration Museum honouring the victims of Armenian, Assyrian and Greek genocides. So now we get to a point where officially on a government building, we have all three genocides mentioned. And again, this marks another pivot from our community, from focusing specifically on our genocide, like each community has been, to mentioning all three. A few months after that, on April 30th, 2009, Michael Atkinson, that Attorney General that unveiled the plaque, introduced a motion asking the South Australian government, that state government, to recognise the Armenian, Assyrian and Greek genocides. And that was passed unanimously. This now marks the very first time an Australian Parliament has recognised all three genocides. And the Greek genocide was put on the map. So from that point of time, and probably even a little beforehand, those three communities, specifically in the state of Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia, started working a little more closely together. That culminated to a recognition now in the New South Wales State Parliament on the 8th of May of 2013. So we've gone from three genocides being recognised in South Australia, and now 5 years later, three genocides recognised in New South Wales. So two state governments in Australia have now recognised the three genocides. So I think it's fair to point out that up until then and since then, there have been at a state level a lot of collaboration, a lot of advocacy. It is very fair to say, though, that for the bulk of that time, up until maybe 2016 or 2017, the collaboration between the three communities was very state-based. And if we were going to tackle this at a federal level, it needed a federal approach. So, after many years of working together, getting to know each other, including forging relationships across state borders, plans were put into motion to form a national committee. And in February 2020, at Parliament House in Canberra, our nation's capital, our federation, together with the Australian Hellenic Council, the Armenian National Committee and the Assyrian National Council, these nationwide bodies, formed the Joint Justice Initiative. Now, this national body formalises the relationship between these four bodies, and the goal, of course, is to lobby government at a federal level for all issues pertaining to those three communities, our three communities, that is, but with a prime focus on the recognition of the genocide. So since the formation 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, 40 parliamentarians have signed up and pledged support for the recognition. Now, from memory, you've got 151 parliamentarians in the lower house, about 86, I believe, in the upper house. So you're talking about 1 in 6 having signed up for this. This is actually not an insignificant number. And it's extremely important to point out that this transcends party lines. So there are people from both major parties and many of the minor parties that have signed up for this initiative. And of course, that brings us up until the 29th of November, when we took our very first step forward in achieving that goal. It's fair to say that the amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes, especially in the last 2 years, is impossible to overstate. So one question I get asked is, why now? If we had not formed the Joint Justice Initiative, if we had not done the work, we would not have been able to capitalise on these world events had it not been for the Joint Justice Initiative. That's the simple truth. As for our community, the Greek community, it predominantly relies on the Pontian community to drive education and advocacy for the issue. And our community has had to make some drastic changes in the way it operates in order to have been an effective partner in the Joint Justice Initiative. This didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen in one state or because of one person. Everyone contributed in some way. I can go through a list of names of people who have played a role in bringing us here, but it's a long list, so I'm not going to do that. I will say this. They all shared two common traits. One, they were not happy with the status quo. And two, they are all great collaborators. The last 15 years has seen our community leap into the stratosphere. Now, remember, with many associations witnessing limited or no engagement by the youth, that is a phenomenal achievement. I still remember being told by a senior member of my old association here in Melbourne that no Australian politician will ever care about the issue of genocide and nothing will ever come of it. That man is still a representative of that organisation. How sad. Fortunately though, there are those who always believe and will continue to believe and push until the memories of our ancestors are honoured. They're the people we need. They're the people who deserve to be at the table because they're willing to give up their time, not to issue some sort of gesture to the past, but to do the best they can to honour the memory of their ancestors. That's it from me. Big thanks to those 6 parliamentarians, as well as the many others, many of you who are watching this now behind the scenes that joined us and joined them in getting this motion up in Parliament. It's not over yet. Still a lot of work ahead of us. So if you are interested in helping, by all means, reach out to our federation. It's not a closed group. If you've got something to contribute, by all means, the door is open. Engage one of the Pontian clubs that are members of our federation. You can engage us directly. Either way, if you want to assist, you want to help out, we would gladly appreciate it. Right, until then, good health and God bless.